Zaujíma, je to nastavené.
The Steam goggles. Yeah, Valve is back at it again with another VR headset. As you guys know, on just a random Wednesday, Valve went out here and dropped 3 major products: a Steam controller, a Steam GameCube, and a Steam VR headset, otherwise known as the Steam Frame. And all of these products have been very well received. Obviously, you check out the YouTube video they're announced in. This video has 3.7 million freaking views, and the like-dislike ratio on this video is absolutely freaking insane, dude. What's funny too is because this is a Steam product, you can go on their top wishlisted things on Steam. You can scroll down and see that these new products are already starting to reach this. The Steam Frame, the VR headset, for example, is up here. And there's a Steam machine, and ignore this game, this looks
Hold up. Wait a minute.
But here's the Steam controller as well. To be honest, you would think a VR headset is something a lot more niche. I mean, Facebook went out here and made an entire push of doing a Meta Quest headset. Yeah, it's had broad appeal. If you check like the Steam hardware survey, a lot of people that use headsets for VR on Steam do use the Meta Quest headsets because honestly they're pretty affordable. To be honest, I'm sitting here like, I'm not really a VR guy. I've really had barely any desire to get a VR headset as well. The only thing I've been considering with VR would be like when I'm traveling, if I want to bring multiple monitors, I could instead use a VR headset instead of using portable monitors and stuff. Like that is so annoying to carry around. But this VR headset from Valve gets me excited. I feel like that's saying something because it's not just the headset that is making waves here. It is what Valve is doing on a technical level. Even bring this stuff to other products.
Quest Pro can actually take advantage of foveated encoding. It's not going to be a feature locked to the Steam Frame.
They're also building the blocks of technology that is going to probably shape the future of computing for freaking ever. And it's all just this random, unassuming VR headset. Let's first go over the Steam Frame itself. Because I'm not really a VR headset guy, so I don't have like a ton of experience with this stuff. From what I can tell, a lot of people like this.
In 2 words or less, this thing is impossibly good.
They said it's lightweight.
The whole weight with the compute module and the headset is about 435 grams. It actually worked out ergonomically, just it didn't feel very heavy.
They said the battery life is okay. It's like 2 to 3 hours from what I can tell. They like the tracking features and everything. The controllers seem to be good. They got cool features like having capacitive buttons so it could see if your finger is resting on the button, so you could have like finger emulation or control within games and stuff, which is pretty cool without having this really bulky setup. The speakers, I guess they're not really headphones, but the speakers that go to your ears seem like they're pretty good. The microphone also seems to be good. It's also comfortable, which is something that a lot of VR headsets struggle with. So like the Steam Frame, genuinely looking good, and this is generally speaking a gaming-first product. Valve has said it themselves.
It's certainly your computer. We tend to think about this as a gaming device first and foremost, so while we don't restrict or limit any media options, that is very much not our focus out of the gate.
And this device is coming from a company that is not that big. Only 79 people are employed to work on Steam. The hardware size of Valve, so this is when they like made the Steam Deck in 2021 and stuff, that was only 41 employees at that time. I don't know how that's really grown. I think there's probably more now because now they're making more hardware products, but overall it seems like Valve is only about 336 employees in 2021, and today it's maybe about 350 employees. Relatively small company pumping out a product like the Steam Frame, which is insane. Honestly, this device competes with things from like Apple. You know, Apple made their Vision Pro headset. That thing is interesting to say the least. They actually just released another refreshed version of it that is so unconsequential. Honestly, even Apple didn't nail things like the comfortability. $3,500, and I just don't know what people genuinely use this product for. The coolest thing that I've seen was this guy was able to use the headset and just sit in his car and then edit photos. It's like you kind of had like a portable workstation, but you're sitting there using like a $2,000 MacBook at least, plus a $3,500 headset. In Apple Vision Pro, there's a switch if you want to ignore poor people. That really makes sense, and I think that's what Apple's going for here. And I know Apple was expecting more sales. Research firm IDC estimated that Vision Pro sales would be under 500,000 units in 2024, and it is probably safe to estimate the sales remain below 1 million as of today. But if I'm being for real right now, I don't think the Steam frame is that cool. I might end up picking one up depending on how good it is, how well it integrates. Like, it has really cool features, like with the streaming, and you get this little like Wi-Fi router dongle from Valve themselves that it's sending about 200 250 megabit per second of bandwidth to the headset.
The streaming bitrate we should confirm later, but it's on the order of 250 megabits per second. And remember, we talked about all those techniques that allow you to have a higher effective bandwidth.
The reason they're able to achieve this is because they have really cool technology where they can track your eyeballs and then concentrate more bit rate from the streaming signal from your computer to where you're actually looking. And apparently it works extremely well, very responsive, low latency, looks super sharp, and everybody that has talked about it has been happy with it.
Look responsive, and I can definitely tell that there's a lot more detail in the center, even though once I toggled the full graphics on, I could actually notice the effects of foveated streaming.
It's like really cool technologies going here. If you're into VR headsets, go crazy. To me, I might pick one up. I don't know. To be honest, I don't care that much about VR. What I really want to talk about is the specs that are going on here. Yes, there's a developer kit. They want other companies to go out here and try it, see if their games work on it, but that isn't even the coolest thing. So here is the specs for the headset itself. There's a 256 gig option and a 1 terabyte option, but whatever. 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5X RAM, which you might notice first off is this is mobile RAM. That's because this is using a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 processor. And this is a really big thing. But let's first just talk about the processor's performance itself, because this is a mobile chip that is in like your phones and stuff. Here it is. It's an 8-core chipset, so 8 CPU cores. I don't know how many of those are performance cores or efficiency cores, not 100% sure. Is using 4 nanometer process technology, which is pretty advanced in terms of processors nowadays. Basically, it has a decent GPU in it as well. If you want to see how this chip stacks up, you can look at some of these benchmarks from Geekbench here. I think this is Geekbench 6. So here is the single core CPU performance. This is important performance for like day-to-day applications. It isn't the fastest chip on Android phones right now, but it's not that bad either. Like, it's not that far behind. Apple is really good at their chips, by the way. It actually seems like the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 single core performance is around the speed of like an iPhone 12 Pro, which came out in about 2020. This is about the speed of like a Core i7 11700 or a Core 7 150U, which is a more recent chip, but like these are much higher power chips that are on like desktops and laptops and stuff. So I head over to multi-core performance. In terms of comparing this to iOS devices, you gotta scroll down a good bit, but not that crazy. It seems to be about on par with the Apple A16 Bionic, which was in the iPhone 14 Pro Max. But at the end of the day, this is a gaming processor on a gaming VR headset, as Valve has even stated themselves. So how does the graphics performance actually stack up? And this is how it performs on Vulkan, which is usually a little bit more optimized for this type of stuff. The Apple chips and everything use Metal for their API. It seems to be about sitting in this range in terms of OpenCL and Vulkan performance. But like, it's not that bad in terms of a processor. It's not the latest that's out there. Those numbers aren't fully representative of what the Steam frame will be able to do, because they made a pretty cohesive cooling system, which is way different than what many phones have. Like, most phones are just passively cooled. This one will probably be able to go faster and go higher power because it has a fan and heat pipes and stuff like that. So also, I mentioned before on the Steam machine, the GameCube video, technically Steam on their devices don't put the highest end stuff in them. And we even saw that with the Steam machine. Like, it's not the fastest device out there. Probably because they want to keep the cost down. They want to make sure they can get these products and these chips at volume. And that brings me to this comment. The console is a PC. The frame is a PC. You are a PC. Everything is a PC. Because as we know in that specific thing, Valve wants you to make these devices your own. In fact, the Steam frame is more than just streaming games from your computer to the Steam frame.
Steam frame is a PC.
And Steam frame is a PC.
Running Steam OS. In addition to streaming, you can install and play a bunch of VR and non-VR games right in the headset without a host PC.
Also its own device that can run its own games. And that's what brings me back to the processor itself. Why this thing is so revolutionary? And it blows my mind how much Valve has been able to accomplish here. Because this is based on ARM64 architecture. And if you don't know why that is so revolutionary for PC, this is a thing that is running games on a completely different architecture to what games typically run on. And it's doing this all on its own without any input from the developers of the games. Supergiant, the developers of Hades, didn't have any input on this. Valve just asked for permission that they can use it, and it just worked on the Steam frame natively without connected to a PC at all. Now, if you're a little bit confused right now at this point, the architecture that Windows runs on is typically x86, and then AMD even made an extension of that is still used wildly today, which made it a 64-bit based architecture. And Intel owns the license for x86. AMD did eventually acquire a license as well to use x86 architecture. So to this day, AMD and Intel are really the only companies that have access to the x86 architecture. And we've seen some things recently where NVIDIA is partnering up with Intel, which is a little sussy and everything. NVIDIA wants that because it gives them access to the x86 architecture in some sort of way. But seriously, Windows uses mostly x86. Almost every game out there that is on PC is using x86 architectures. And basically what Valve is doing here is they're able to translate x86 architecture into ARM. We even saw some level of this before. So obviously Steam OS is running on Linux, but most games are built for Windows. They had to translate Windows games onto Linux. And this translation layer is called Proton. Almost every game you launch on a Steam Deck, for example, if you're running SteamOS, just pretty much works. And Valve themselves have brought a lot into Linux gaming in general. Now, some anti-cheats and everything still have issues, and it's a little bit of a worry for the GameCube right now, because if you want to play a multiplayer title, basically like it might not work on your device. And as the popularity does grow for this, honestly, it might change the way that anti-cheats work, or there might be a bigger like development. But anyways, like Valve already has been doing this with translating Windows into Linux. And also a slight side note is because the Steam frame is a computer and it runs SteamOS, that also means that they've been making SteamOS possible to run on ARM in general too, which does probably mean some major things for things like the Steam Deck in the future. And other companies have also tried to do this. But a few of them are trillion-dollar companies like Apple, with their M series processors. If you remember back in 2020, Apple made the transition of going from Intel-based x86 Macs into going into M series chips, which were actually based on the ARM architecture. So they had to make tons of stuff. This transition was massive. I mean, they rebuilt Mac OS to run on ARM natively. A ton of different softwares needed to support ARM as well from the jump. But Apple did also try this with the Rosetta translation layer. So like if any app didn't run natively and still doesn't run natively today, it uses a translation layer from x86 to ARM. And overall, like Rosetta is a pretty good translation layer. Seems like this guy was able to get a pretty decent improvement on like this software. This is, I think, Logic Pro. So he was able to get 148 tracks on the original version on x86, and he got 212 tracks on the ARM version of the app. And this guy as well said that if you were to use Cinebench, which is a benchmarking software for CPUs and stuff, it seems like the Rosetta translation layer was still getting about 78 to 79% of the native performance. And I still think that this stuff was around the beginning of when Rosetta came out, and it probably got better over time as well. Yes, it would eat up more power. Yes, it'd eat up more battery life when you're using the translation layer, but at least you could get these apps to run. And because the new ARM chips were so good, it seemed like it didn't really matter that much. But one of the big things that they don't really mention, because we all know that Mac has never been that good at gaming, like that was before they introduced ARM as well. So let me show you my Steam library on a freaking MacBook. As you can see on the left side of the screen, there is a ton of games here because I have a massive Steam library. Okay, I got like over 200 games or something. And you just scroll down here, these are some of my favorited games on Steam. Now what's interesting is Steam itself, the program does run natively on ARM, and that only happened in 2025 because Valve just didn't even think it was necessary. They just ran it through Rosetta anyways. There's a little button toggle up here that says show games that will run on Mac OS. I'm gonna click this button, you're gonna see how much smaller this is. Yeah. Obviously not that many games are running on Mac now. You see how much that favorite library just shrunk down. If I even scroll down the left side, that is not nearly as many games on the left side of the screen there. But what's funny too is a lot of these games I think are just being translated as well. So you'll see a lot of light indie titles, say like Balatro. These are games that honestly are probably running through a translation layer, but because they're light enough, the developers are like, okay, I mean, yeah, it's not running as efficiently through the translation layer, but it does still work. And I know that for sure because when you run like Balatro, but when you run it on the Mac, the laptop heats up in this very light game and it drains the battery life a lot more. So I think it's being translated through some kind of compatibility layer. But there are some games like Black Ops 3 that I think does run native on ARM, Baldur's Gate 3, and even like No Man's Sky, I'm pretty sure runs natively on ARM. And nowadays, even Cyberpunk 2077 does run native on ARM. I think the reason why is because they developed the Switch 2 version of the game. So even though Rosetta is a pretty cool translation layer for like x86 to ARM, you still don't have the same game support. Also, Windows has a version for ARM as well. You know, like overall, I mean, the Snapdragon laptops were kind of cool because they're better battery efficiency compared to the other chips that are out there and everything. But you know, Windows on ARM, it still didn't have very good app compatibility. Here's some stuff from PC Magazine. And yeah, some of these apps just don't work, or they don't work in the way that they're intended. Some things aren't great. And it's because not every app on Windows either runs natively on ARM. Like it needs that translation layer, and Microsoft's version of this translation layer is called Prism. Because of this app compatibility, to be honest, and how buggy this stuff, especially at the launch, was, these really haven't sold that many devices. Like this was a massive marketing attempt from Microsoft here. Even today, it doesn't seem like they're that amazing, especially when it comes to like gaming. And there is a website out here that does check the compatibility for Windows on ARM. Just for example, just look up Call of Duty on here. This is a franchise that Microsoft actually owns because they own Activision nowadays. This one doesn't work Windows on ARM. Call of Duty 2 apparently works perfectly on ARM. Modern Warfare Remastered unplayable. Like this is Call of Duty, you know what I mean? This is a pretty big franchise. I don't know, just say Baldur's Gate 3. Let's see if that comes up. Let's just say it's playable on here. Arc Raiders. Will this work on here? Oh, it doesn't even come up. Yeah, so I don't think you're gonna be playing that many games Windows on ARM. Microsoft, one of the most valuable companies in the world, has also struggled to get games working through this ARM x86 translation layer. One of the main advantages of Windows is having broad game compatibility. It doesn't really do that for you on ARM. So it does make me curious of how good this is on the Steam frame, that they're getting games that are Windows x86 games translated into Linux and translating into ARM. Steam is doing this through a software called Fex, which is open source, and here's the GitHub for it. This is just a software that Valve has been contributing to very, very heavily. Now, there is a performance hit to this. Like, it isn't free to translate this, and honestly, I'd be curious to see how much the performance hit is on the Steam frame. And it does seem like it is rapidly improving, a lot like how Proton did.
Basically, as each new game comes online, they might explore, oh, this game doesn't work well because it's doing the following sequence of CPU calls. Like, oh, nobody has implemented that. Recently, by recently I mean about a year ago, we've sort of transitioned to the point where now I expect games to work. So I'll pick a random game from the back catalog, launch it, and almost all the time it works great.
What I think this is super cool for is, what doors does it open up? Obviously, we've got those two companies, Intel and AMD, that have the licenses for x86, which means that these companies control so much of the market because they have access to that compatibility. Apple is probably the closest competitor, but they still don't have game compatibility. But what this is with Steam is this opens the freaking door to other ARM devices coming in and playing games. These new chips are very efficient, and they can be more custom made for running games on ARM. What this could open us up to in the future is even on desktop platforms that we could maybe have ARM-based processors, I wonder if Valve's translation layer from x86 to ARM would also be able to work on Windows in the future. That is one of the major advantages with this FX translation layer is because they can control the operating system as well, and they know a game is launching because you're launching it through the Steam launcher. What does this also mean for the Steam Deck in the future? At the beginning of the Valve announcement video, they tease an update to the Steam Deck.
We're excited to talk about the future of Steam Deck, but not today.
If you do look at the Steam Deck itself, what are the major problems that it has? Well, it's not that powerful, and the battery life isn't amazing. But up to this point in time, the Steam Deck had to have been x86 architecture if it wanted to be more compatible with games. But what if in the future, the Steam Deck could be an ARM device that could be more optimized? Think about the possibilities of this, and that would mean also from other companies, as long as they're using Steam's software, that other handheld gaming PCs possibly could be using ARM architecture. FX is, open source. I mean, it's on GitHub and everything. Think of how this opens the door for using ARM processors to run games. We got competition. Like, this is something that I was super hyped about when the Snapdragon X Elite chips came out from Microsoft, and I was very disappointed because they didn't really change that much, to be honest. Now, this is just a VR headset, and this is honestly what I'm more interested in with it, with the ARM processors and everything. But I do want to bring it back to the headset itself. Like, how much do you think this is going to cost? I'm not 100% sure.
In classic Valve fashion, has not revealed the exact pricing. They're aiming for something that's a little bit less than what the Valve Index was. So that was like, it depends on which package you got, but let's say 900. Hopefully it's around there.
All I've seen is that it's going to cost less than the Valve Index, which was $1,000. It doesn't seem like it's going to be super cheap because there's a lot of cool technology going in here, and you get a lot in the package from what I can tell. So let me know what you guys think about this, and we'll see how this stacks up, especially when it does come out. That's going to be it for me, though. I'm going to see you guys in the next video. You have a good one, and peace.
Pequeno videico.